All right, here we go. My thoughts on Rings of Power, episode number 6. This one had some action in it. It had a war scene with orcs getting killed, which is always a good time. A good throwback feel to the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. I will say this. I'm going to try to say some positive things first before I unleash on it with my feelings on the overall just direction and everything. I enjoy the orcs. I always laugh every time that the orcs are on because they do still have that orc-like feel from the original Lord of the Rings trilogy that I love. You know, they're all hunched over and yes, me lord, you know. Okay, with that being said, now we're going to jump into something that's annoying about the orcs that came out again in episode 6. Adar, who we will find out later in the episode, which is something that he's an elf that was twisted by Morgoth back in the day, and that is the origin of orcs, or as he likes to call himself, an Uruk, which I believe he's an Uruk because the Urukai are the advanced form of orcs that are capable of being in sunlight. Not a thing for them. No problem. The regular orcs, they don't like it. So I'm not sure what he's getting at if he's trying to say that they're all Uruks, and if that's just the root word for orcs, but he's clearly different from them. But here's what I find annoying about it right off the bat, and they've been doing this in a couple episodes already. He is trying to make, or the writers are trying to use Adar as a vessel to make orcs almost endearing, to make them almost like you can root for the orcs in this one, like to make you feel for them a little bit. And it's another sign of them just departing from the lore of Tolkien. Now, obviously, this is what it is, but this is still in the same realm. This is Tolkien's realm that Rings of Power is based out of. So it seems like they would want to do some attempt to maintain the overall theme, the overall feel. One of the main, very stark themes, which is very easy. It's like Tolkien made it extremely easy in his realm to differentiate good from evil. Orcs are ugly, disgusting, nasty, dark, villainous creatures that hate each other. They fight against each other at every turn. They're very much a mad, like corrupted, twisted version of what regular humanity is supposed to look like. And that's why I believe Tolkien made them that way. So when it talks about in the lore that they are twisted and they are perverted versions of elves and men, he's telling you that that's what they are. They are not these things that are to be endeared and to feel sorry for. He's trying to make a very clear, easy understanding image of, hey, this is an evil character. These people are bad, and they look like this because they're evil. So him having Adar has this rousing speech, attempting to make it rousing, to be like, finally, we've been looking for a home for our own, and brothers and sisters, like trying to make them into this like family, like where you feel bad for them because they've been kicked out of their homes. These are orcs. It's like taking what they're trying to do is the writers are trying to make us feel for something that is analogous to me saying about some sewage water. Hey, this sewage water, it once was pure and it was clean. And let's go ahead and root for the sewage water. Because, you know, it's got some components of water in it. And who's to say that this water is any less pure than a spring water? Okay? Like, we don't need to root for sewage water. We don't need to root for the orcs. Let the orcs be bad. That's what they are. They're bad. And Sauron is bad. And Sauron and Morgoth, they are the ones that made the orcs into what they are. Let's not have these little speeches, and let's not have Adar attempt to make them more human-like. It's like in this series, they've been trying to blur the lines between good and evil, which is another, I mean, I feel like a politically, like a modern political route that they take to try to kind of like throw off the traditional viewpoint of good and evil. The Western patriarchy, again, which has established through social constructs their forms of what good and evil are. Let's go ahead and erase those lines. Let's blur those lines. It feels like they are trying to bleed into that again in examples like this. We don't need orcs we don't need to make them relatable. Okay? And with that being said, I will give them this. If they're going to keep going in this route, what I will give them as a form of grace is that Adar, he clearly is an elf, and I think that maybe he got misguided somewhere along the way in his, while he's in Morgoth's dungeons being tortured and perverted and twisted. He's got some little shred still left in him, and he's gotten it into his mind that his good deed that he can still do is to try to take his quote-unquote family, this ragtag bunch of orcs, and try to kind of like give them a home, try to like do the right thing for these orcs. And so I just think that maybe he's misguided and maybe he's lost, but he's still kind of like a broken like a wind-up toy that just goes in circles. Like he's got some gears still spinning in his mind, and he's trying to kind of, in his own way, do the right thing, and that's how he's doing it. So what I think is going to happen is probably Adar, I'm hoping, maybe, Adar learns a lesson when Sauron actually comes into power, that Sauron is an evil mofo, and he doesn't care, he doesn't give half a shit about these orcs, or him, or anything. Sauron is going to be deceitfully evil. That's what he should be. That's what he is in the books. But as if that means anything anymore in this series. Okay, so with that rant in place, my next comments are going to just come on the crappy writing in this episode. This is cheesy 80s fantasy, poor writing level. The only difference is in cheesy 80s poor fantasy writing, it was still a good time. It was like a new thing, and they didn't need to explain things that made sense. But when you've got a framework that Tolkien, the OG, the greatest fantasy writer of all time, has given you, and you defy that template to make one of your own, it better be at least as good, which it's not. So they're forsaking good writing to make bad plot ideas. Okay, bad plot idea. Here we go. The entire first 5 episodes have been Galadriel obstinately and petulantly begging at the feet of Queen Regent Muriel to have them send a bunch of warriors to save the Southlands. And simultaneously, she has been basically forcing Halbrand to admit that he's a king, and if you pay attention, he has never really done that until this episode, and he's sitting there thinking about it, and the way that they verify that he's the king of the Southlands is a peasant says to him, "Are you the king that we've long awaited?" And he says, "Yes." And they're like, "Oh, hail the king!" This is all because he had a stupid little badge, a little sigil, a little pendant that Galadriel, in her mind, felt like it was so necessary to make him into a king because he had that little thing. That now he's, okay, all right, he's king of the Southlands now. Cool. All right. Now, this may be explained by the fact that there's a lot of people online saying that Halbrand is Sauron. If Halbrand is Sauron, it explains why he's such a good smithy in Numenor, and explains why he's good at and crafty at getting people to do his thing and go his way. It would explain why maybe he's got Galadriel already under his spell, that she is so just like hell-bent on him being the king and wanting to save his lands. Okay, so he's the king of the Southlands apparently now. But that could, if he's Sauron, that could all fit, well into his plan. So it could work. But the problem I have is they spent the first 5 episodes trying to get to Middle-earth. They ended up bringing 3 little tiny ships. And on those 3 ships, then let's cut to the scene of them speeding on all on horseback across the Middle-earth plains, going at full haste. Let's go at all haste that can be mustered, according to Queen Mariel or something like that. How did they fit all of them onto 3 ships? Number 1. Number 2, how the F, when they're in Numenor, do any of them know that those people, which amount to, at this point, maybe 50 peasants, led by Borwin, because she's boring, and Andar, or whatever the elf's name is, how do they know that, we're just going to go to this village that has 2 buildings in it, and that's the one that they're going to be defending, and it's going to be right at the nick of time, because they don't know that they're not still holed up in that tower. They don't know anything about where they're even at. They don't know that that's even the village. Halbrand hasn't told them anything. Halbrand, up to this point, hasn't even admitted that he's a king of the Southlands. He's just been going along with it. So all of these people and their horses magically show up on the shores off of 3 boats, and they ride with all haste to the exact location where the peasants, that amount to probably 50, maybe 100 of them if we're being generous, have been holed up, and there's this big epic thing that, wow, they saved them. So you're telling me that 5 episodes of this buildup to get to Middle-earth has been to save this one little town of two thatched roof buildings, and all for Halbrand, who is just now kind of sort of admitting that he's the king of that. This is doing a great disservice to the full magnitude of what Middle-earth of this age is. And I understand, hey, we can make the case that they're still building it up, and this is just the first little sliver that maybe it will expand into even more. But that kind of makes me a little bit leery. Are you telling me that we're going to have to deal with this level again of this slow paced, hey, we've got to explain everything, speed for the next couple seasons before we finally get it open to how big of an issue this all really is? So the writing has been it's just really bad. Every time I see Galadriel, and it's like they have to try their best to make her look like she's a warrior. So in this one, out of nowhere, she does 2 side, layover on her side off of the horse thing while arrows are flying at her that she has no idea are coming at her. Elves can't do that, but she does it. She gets to stand there and watch the volcano come, and we know that she's not going to die. That's another thing about this versus Game of Thrones. Why Game of Thrones was cool was because it was realistic. And guess what else is realistic? In Tolkien's works, the main characters, they would get killed off too. Not in this. No, we've had Borwin make it through a number of incidents in which she should be dead. She was getting shot at by orc arrows until they just decided not to shoot at her when she came on the screen. And then in this episode, she gets an arrow through the shoulder. Of course it goes through the shoulder. And then I promise you, we're going to find out that she survived the volcano thing, along with all of the other main characters. And how many times have they had this nick of time? Oh, this thing's happening, but then, oh, look, oh man, whoo, in a nick of time, they got saved. So the village people get saved in a nick of time by the Númenóreans. Whoo, they knew exactly where to go. And then Erandir is getting pummeled by a giant orc and about ready to get his eye stabbed out by the blade. And whoo, in a nick of time, Borwin comes up and stabs him in the back. Like, I will give them this. That was pretty gruesome and wild to see that nasty orc blood pouring out of that giant orc's eye socket all over Erandir. That was pretty awesome. Okay. That's really all I got. I'm nitpicking, yes, because this is sub-level writing. It's sub-level entertainment. It's mediocre at best. It's not $1 billion worth. I think that what they did is, for each of these ridiculous stories that they've been trying to build up poorly, for the dwarf story, for the Númenórean story, for the Borwin and Erandir story, for the Harfoots that are a waste of time. All of them, I think that they each had their own little crew. And they're like, let's do this. And each little group is saying, I want to do this and this and this. And I don't think that any of them have ever read any of the books. They don't know anything about what they're talking about, but they're like, hey, we've seen Lord of the Rings. It's great. What if we make our characters like this, like they did in Lord of the Rings? Because they're not following any form of the actual lore, so why not? They're using names. Well, this guy, his name is Elendil. So let's have him come, and then the queen will have him sit next to her, and then he'll charge into battle at the end. Because, like, he was just a stable hand. He shouldn't have been a stable hand, but they made him into one, and then suddenly he's sitting next to the Queen Muriel. They don't know what they're doing. And it's just kind of comical and elementary. All right, I need to stop talking. You guys get my point. Hey, I'm going to keep watching because it is still Lord of the Rings franchise. I'm watching Nerd of the Rings. It's a site where it's a very knowledgeable guy who he breaks down the episodes, and he gives you these little nuggets of things that he's like, maybe they're trying to do this, maybe they're talking about this territory, but then that doesn't really match up with this. But he's even struggling to give them any form of like credibility on this. Anyways, with that being said, go watch Nerd of the Rings. It's a YouTube channel, and I love you guys. Good luck making it through this with me. We'll see what happens in the next episode.